The Grand Rosewood Restaurant was the kind of place where chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls and every fork had its own velvet cushion. It was the kind of place where money didn't just talk, it roared. Richard Caldwell, one of the wealthiest men in the city, owned 3 buildings on the same street and had never once been told no. He arrived that evening in a silver suit, flanked by 2 business associates, his voice already too loud before he even reached his table. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. The hostess smiled nervously. The other guests shifted in their seats. The staff exchanged quiet looks. They all knew him. They all feared him. His reputation wasn't just known, it was felt, like cold air creeping under a door. He had sued a busboy once for spilling water on his shoe. He had fired a valet for parking 1 inch too far left. Power, to Richard Caldwell, was not something he held gently. It was something he wore like armor, sharp and gleaming, and he used it freely. That evening, a young woman named Sophie was working her 3rd double shift of the week. She was 23. Studying nursing at night, and sending half her paycheck home every month without fail. She moved through the restaurant quietly, efficiently, her smile never faltering even when her feet ached. She was good at her job because she had learned from the best. Her mother, a woman who had worked service jobs her entire life with grace and without complaint. Sophie's mother, Margaret, had come to visit her daughter at work that night. She was 67 years old. Wearing a simple floral dress, her white hair pinned back neatly. She sat at a small table near the window, waiting for Sophie's break so they could share a cup of tea together. She looked ordinary. She looked humble. She looked, to Richard Caldwell's calculating eyes, completely out of place. He noticed her on his way to the bathroom. He stopped. He looked her up and down with the kind of contempt that doesn't bother to hide itself. "Excuse me," he said loudly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Is this a charity night I wasn't informed about? Who let this woman in here?"
The room went quiet.
Margaret looked up at him calmly. "I'm waiting for someone," she said softly. Richard laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Waiting for someone? In a place like this?" He gestured around the restaurant. "I don't think this is the kind of establishment you're used to, sweetheart. Maybe the diner down the street is more your speed." A few of his associates chuckled uncomfortably. Other diners stared. No one moved. No one spoke up. Margaret did not flinch. She folded her hands on the table and looked at him, with eyes that had seen far worse than him and survived it. "I raised a good person," she said quietly. "I hope someone did the same for you." Richard opened his mouth to say something sharp. And that was the moment Sophie walked out from the kitchen, carrying a small tray with 2 cups of tea. She stopped when she saw the scene. She saw her mother sitting straight-backed and dignified. She saw Richard Caldwell standing over her like he owned the very air around her. Something shifted in Sophie's face, not anger, not tears, but something quieter and far more powerful. She walked to her mother's table, set down the tray and looked directly at Richard. "Is there a problem, sir?" she asked evenly. Richard blinked. "You know this woman?" Sophie placed her hand gently over her mother's. "This is my mother," she said. "She worked 3 jobs to raise me alone after my father passed. She cleaned offices, she waitressed, she ironed strangers' clothes. She never once complained. She came here tonight because she wanted to see where I work, and I am proud to show her." The restaurant was absolutely still. Richard Caldwell, who had never been truly seen before, felt something he had not felt in years. Shame. Real warm, suffocating shame. The manager, who had been watching from the corner, stepped forward. "Mr. Caldwell," he said firmly, "I'm going to have to ask you to return to your table." Richard said nothing. He straightened his silver jacket and walked away. No sharp remark. No threat. Nothing. Sophie sat across from her mother and poured the tea. Margaret reached over and patted her daughter's hand. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. Sophie shook her head. "Yes, I did." The room slowly returned to its sounds. Cutlery, conversation, soft music. But something had changed in it, something that couldn't be undone. Dignity had stood in a silver restaurant and refused to move, and for one quiet, powerful moment it had won. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories for more stories that remind us what truly matters in this world.